Welcome to Dear Romance Writer, your home for the questionable advice for the bewildered and befuddled, random pop culture recommendations, and conversations about you feelings. Be sure to send in your letters seeking advice on our anonymous form at dearromancewriter.com.
Dear Romance Writer is part of the Frolic Podcast Network, a podcast community of everything romance and romance related. If you're into romance fiction of any flavor, the Frolic Podcast Network includes shows that feature book club style discussions, author interviews, comedy, critique, and fantastic conversations as well.
It includes some of the most innovative, interesting, and entertaining podcasts, including Kinda Dating, Crappy Friends, My Imaginary Friends, Smart Podcast Trashy Books, and Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. What does this mean for you, the listener? More shows to enjoy and more opportunities for us to introduce you to great episodes and new podcasts you'll love. Find new shows to add to your podcast subscriptions at frolic.media/podcasts. Now on to this week's show.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on another fabulous episode of Dear Romance Writer. We have an amazing couple of letters this week. I mean, I don't think it's talking vagina amazing, but you can't have that every week. We are super excited also to have the fabulous and pink-haired R.L. Merrill, Ro, you can call her Ro, here with us today. Ro, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you write, and where the good folks can find you.
Can only the good folks or any folks? Because
we
I'm
only
down
have
with
good
the good
folks.
the naughty folks, whoever.
Those are still good folks.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm R.L. Merrill. I write contemporary paranormal horror, all kinds of stuff. Always something with music. Always hope. Always love. Always happily ever after. Even in horror, it can be done. I've been doing this for a while. I write both straight stories and queer stories, and I love to tell all kinds of stories.
And am I remembering correctly that you are a huge metalhead?
Yes. Metal.
What about you?
Yeah, thank you, because a lot of people just kind of they just pat me on the head when it comes to that. But no, I am a huge music fan in general, but absolutely I love metal. Although I've been working on a co-author project for the last few months, and my whole playlist, Spotify will not know what to do with me this year because it's like all reggaeton and salsa, so I have no idea.
Ooh, fun.
How that's gonna happen. Yeah, very exciting. But I have to shift gears totally with the next project, so it's Spotify is gonna be like, what is this now?
What's your favorite metal band or current favorite? I know favorites are hard.
Well, favorite is always Metallica. The trifecta: Metallica, Korn, Slipknot. But well, no, that's not true either, because there's always Judas Priest and Black Sabbath. So anyway, currently actually one of my favorite recent bands is Light the Torch, and they just put out an album last week that is phenomenal. So highly recommend that.
We talk music all the time.
Yes. Yes.
So shall we dive into our letter?
Sure.
It's from Emma, and it says, "Dear Romance Writer, happy Pride Month," because we're recording this actually the day after the end of Pride, but it's always Pride. It's always Pride. This is the first Pride that I'm celebrating as a member of the community instead of just an ally, though I'm still definitely figuring out where I fit in. Last year, I came out as bi to my husband and a few close friends. I'm in my mid-30s, and it wasn't until more recently that I even felt like I found the words to describe my sexuality. It felt like a light finally went off, and I was like, oh yeah, that's totally... Anyway, my little support system has been very supportive, especially my husband. We've been together and married for a little over 10 years. I've never been in any non-hetero relationships, and a few months ago, the husband asked if that was something I would like to try. At first, the idea threw me for a loop, but the more I've thought about it, the more interested I'm becoming. The two of us have talked about it a lot. Our current relationship is great, and I don't want to blow that up. We've both shared some possibilities for what opening up our relationship could look like, and we tried to talk through some of the potential pitfalls and issues that could arise. I don't know anyone else who's ever been in this position. Am I crazy for even considering changing what I have now, or would it be good to explore what's all out there, if I can make that work with my husband? It feels like a bit of a minefield. We plan to keep talking through our feelings on the matter. We're both fairly introverted and awkward at the best of times, so it's not like I'm racing out to the club to find a date tonight. Club, is that even where you meet people these days? As we keep exploring the possibilities, does anyone have any advice for me? Any ideas or things I may not have yet considered? Thanks sincerely. What if three's not a crowd? Well,
I know.
anyone want to jump on that?
I had lots of feelings about it.
Go.
I
Go
had lots
first.
of feelings about it as somebody who is bisexual and who, however, my husband kind of knew, because we've known each other since I was 13. So he's known me forever. He knew this about me, married me anyway. But and even though I didn't necessarily have a word for it back then, because we've been together for 25 years. So, but it's come up in our relationship at but I had to kind of think of it a few ways. And this is where I think, we can kind of ask questions that maybe they haven't asked. And one is, well, the first thing is you can plan for everything. You can talk, but you're not going to know how it's going to impact your relationship until you take that step. And so knowing that you've done all the preparation in the world, are you still willing to take that step, even though you know that it could have any, like you said, a minefield. So there's no predicting what's going to happen. There are, what about opening your relationship appeals to you? Do you feel like you need it in order to be fulfilled? Do you and your husband ever plan to have children? And if so, how do you think that will be impacted? Or you may already have kids. So again, how will that impact your parenting choices and things like that if you choose to, take that step with your relationship? So I had a lot of questions, and maybe those are the questions that they have already asked. But the biggest thing is you won't know. You can't know until you do it. And so knowing that, is that still something that you want to do?
Well, and I would also throw in that making a decision one way or another in this situation doesn't have to be forever. You really can. You could say, okay, let's take like a month to get used to this and really kind of focus and think through all those questions and the things that don't pop up when we are immediately in the thick of things, or if you're like, yeah, we want to try a more open relationship, but let's do it sort of a trial basis to a certain extent. You can say, and how long that is and how thorough that is also there, because there's a lot of different ways to do an open relationship. It could be open only for you. It could be open for both of you. It could be open for, hey, only if I want to explore this side of my sexuality, but not that side of my sexuality. Is it something that I can do on my own? And as long as it doesn't come into your partner's view, then they're okay with it? Or is this something to where they're only going to be okay with it if they are knowledgeable and they know what's going on? Is it something that can happen locally? Or is it something that has to happen, hey, if you're on a business trip or whatever it may be? There are a lot of in between a completely 100% closed relationship and a completely 100%, anything goes open relationship. There's a lot to negotiate here, and there's a lot to think about, and you don't have to say, I'm going to make this decision now and it's going to be forever. It could be, let's sort of baby step this in if you want to go that way. and try it and see what happens, but go in, do what Rowan always says and talk your face off.
Yeah.
Talk your face off. Do not assume that what you're thinking an open relationship means actually is what your partner thinks.
Yeah.
You have
Don't
to use
assume
all
anything.
the words.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that there's all that negotiation that has to happen. And I think one thing that would be super useful to know either before the negotiation, or maybe that's something that comes out as part of it, is what is your goal? Because I think that in this letter, the piece that I was sort of wondering about was figuring out that you're bisexual once you already have a partner who you love and are happy with. That can mean something just for you. It can be how you identify. It can recontextualize things that have happened in your past.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything about your relationship with your primary partner or with your current partner. There are lots of people who are, so like if you'd known you were bisexual all along and had ended up with someone, would you decide to have an open relationship so that you could potentially figure things out with other people? Maybe not. But I do think that like there's a I don't mean to put this on the letter writer at all. I think this is a cultural thing, not a them thing. But I do think there's this cultural idea that like what being bisexual means is that you like men and you like women, and that those are like two different categories of people. And so if you've ended up with a man, what you need to do is like, to fully explore your bisexuality, you need to like go see what it's like to be with a woman. But male and female are like, first of all, not really categories. They're certainly not binary categories, we all know. And like, what does that mean? You like, why would it be different to go explore your sexuality with women when you love your partner and have been happy? Why is that different than like going to explore what it would be like to have a different male partner?
That was like my question too.
Yeah, so I think that like it doesn't sound like what you're saying is, again, that's why I don't think that this letter writer is suggesting that binary. But I do want to advise, like, be careful in thinking through what is it about culture's sort of clumsy, ham-handed description of bisexuality have you internalized that might be making you feel like discovering this about yourself has recast your current relationship, because that doesn't have to be the case. It could be the case that like you suddenly are realizing that you think having sex with women would be different than having sex with men for some reason, like that your desires about women are different than your desires about your partner. And then that's a different issue. That's something that's like, there are a lot of people whose like partner and their sexual needs overlap like on Venn diagram style, but each person has that little crescent that they don't fulfill, and they choose to have other partners that like are more compatible for certain types of desires, and that's all fine. Like, bottom line, it's all fine. But I do think like be very thoughtful and dig deep and figure out like, is it that you feel like you missed out on a category of thing? Is it that there is something about your current relationship that you feel is fundamentally not satisfying a need? And is that something that you want to talk about that relationship? Because opening up a relationship, like I think oftentimes that, yeah, like Rose said, it brings up a lot of things that you can't predict. And I don't think that they're always the things that you think.
Yeah. No matter how many times you plan and jot down a list, there's always something that pops up that you didn't, consider. Just in general with anything, any kind of planning, not just this, but any kind of planning. But the thing that I was worried about was that, not necessarily for Emma, but for anyone who discovers their sexuality late in life, is that there's this pressure from inside and outside the community that if you don't have experiences in the label that you choose, then you're not really that label. Like if you're bisexual and you've only ever been with men or only ever been with women, then you're not really bisexual. So I hope there's no internal pressure here that's like, oh, I have to have that experience or I'm not legit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well,
Yeah,
and
also,
go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Also, I think it's all fine. Like Rowan said, it's fine, whatever. But again, do you trust that your partner is being completely honest with you about how they feel about it? Or are they like, anything you want, babe? Because maybe they're having some insecurities, like if I don't let them do this, then they're going to leave me. Or, if I don't. So do you trust that your partner is 100% gung-ho with this as well? And if the tables were turned, how would you feel about that? If this was if this is a male female relationship and your husband came to you and said, I want to be with a man, like, would you feel the same about it? And I think some people have some different feelings about that, right, wrong, or whatever. It's not, feelings are not right or wrong. They just are, right? So, but again, all the talking, awesome. That's great. Ask the questions, make the list, whatever. But, human beings are not easily.
We are messy, messy things. Absolutely. And I would sort of, to build off of that, what you're also looking at is, if you open up the relationship so that you can explore your side of your new, it's not a new situation, but I guess a newly accepted situation, put it that way, I think. But and that's okay. You have, the question becomes, does that become a dual project for both of you, whether he is exploring a different side of his sexuality, or if he is exploring the same side of his sexuality, just with more people, so you've got all of that situation to deal with too. And even if you are not somebody who's a jealous person, you have to really, number one, God bless you. I don't know how you do that, but you've got to sit down and really think about how you would react in certain situations and prepare for the absolute worst. I am a big prepare for the absolute worst person, and I think you would have to do that with this. Number one, and I totally just blanked on number two because I'm like that. And so there was a number three right after that as well, but it has been a day and a half. So, but Emma, I would say really what I would recommend that you do, sit down, communicate your face off, number one. Number two, go through all the worst case scenarios personally inside your head so that you are not trying to be someone for the other person. You are able to feel your feelings, whether they're right or wrong, and without anything else. So be honest with yourself, number two. And then number three, also realize that I think there are some experiences, whether sexual or non-sexual, that we think about having and we're like, oh my God, that would be awesome. I am totally on board for that. It turns me on, it flips the trigger, it does all of these things. But to actually get in that situation may not be what you were expecting or what you wanted. Sometimes that really awesome chocolate mousse pie in the bakery window tastes like cardboard. Okay. And so you've also got to deal with that too, because you can build up a situation to think that it's going to be something that it's not. And I think when you've got a long-term partnership that's involved in this, you have to think about those factors as well.
It's risk assessment, right? Because it's like, am I willing to lose everything I have with this person in order to explore this thing? You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I mean, that's only the question that only Emma and Emma's partner can answer. So, you guys need to sit down and have that conversation.
Yeah. And I think it would be great to like find other people who've been through what you're talking about and see what the kind of spectrum of experience that people have had has been. You might be able to glean some useful answers or advice from folks because I'm sure you would find people who are like, I discovered that I was bisexual in my 30s and I left my partner and decided to start playing the field, all the way to like, and then we never talked about it again, and everything in between.
So do you guys have recommendations? Because Emma does say she doesn't know anybody else in this situation.
I mean, Reddit for sure has lots of fora for
Yeah.
such things.
Yeah.
I think it's like I feel like there are some subreddits that are like tender and sweet little corners of the world that you could totally find people on who aren't gonna like ruin your life or steal your identity. I think this could be a tender, sweet corner
It could
of Reddit.
happen.
There's a tender, sweet corner of Tumblr as well.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Especially in the queer community. There's a lot.
Or TikTok. Honestly,
That's true.
like
Yeah.
I've had a few videos that have come across my feed, actually more on Instagram, and then I went over to TikTok and watched and just talk, people talking about their experiences being bi or being queer, and what people assume about them as a result and what their experiences are. And some of those would be good to know, because you may think again that you've covered all the bases, but when you talk to somebody or listen to somebody who's actually been through it and you see what's happened to their life, like you may decide, okay, maybe things are good the way they are, and maybe that's and again, is it the actual sexual experience that defines you as a person, or is it your relationship with your partner that has more of a impact on who you are as a person? I mean, neither one should be who you are as a whole person, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Is it an issue of curiosity or is it an issue of fulfillment?
Ooh, I love that. That is a great way to put it.
It is.
And that's not to say that open relationships don't work.
Oh yeah.
There are people that have open relationships. They're fabulous. They work out great. But it is also not something that works for everyone or 100% of the time.
Yeah, I love that formulation, Zio, of curiosity versus feeling fulfilled or satisfied. And there's also like in general, I think that I would hate to suggest that old chestnut of like bisexuality as a gateway to like realizing that you're just 100% queer, because of course that is a real thing for some people, but it's such a stereotype and I do not want to reinforce it. But having said that, if what you're feeling is like, if your gut response to the question, is it just curiosity or is it fulfillment, is like, no, this is about fulfillment, then I do think like, think about what it means to be, and this has nothing to do with not loving your partner, I'm sure you do, but like think about what it means to realize that you also are attracted to women. Like when you think about your past, is what you're realizing that you've actually had a number of women in your life who you really, really loved with your whole heart, who were close friends, who you wanted to spend a lot of time with, who you kept thinking like, if only I were sexually attracted to you, this would be so perfect, because then we could be together forever and never have to, deal with anybody else. And if that's what you find yourself thinking, and suddenly now you've just realized that you also want to have sex with women, I would just think about what that might mean and think about is what you would actually like to give yourself a chance at dating and finding love in this new category of people. And again, that has nothing to do with how much you love your current partner. I'm sure that you do. There are tons of people who like mainly are attracted to X category of people, but then there are like exceptions to every rule, but if you do find yourself thinking like, what's going to happen when I finally have sex with a woman and then I realize that I've fallen in love with her, and like, how is that going to go down? Just think about it.
We don't get to choose who we fall in love with,
right?
Even if we're already in love with somebody.
All the planning. I mean, and what if her partner falls in love with someone in this open situation? Like, so it's just
and be safe and take precautions and all that stuff, because again, it's fair to the person you're with, but it's fair to your partner, and it's just being safe.
And once if you do decide to open things up, keep that line of communication open. Like it's not like Avery said, it's not one and done. Just like keep talking so that you guys know, okay, this is not working. We need to,
And
Good
make
luck.
sure you're being open with whoever you start dating too, so that it's very clear what you're looking for, and that can change, of course. But I feel like the best rule of thumb that I have is like, the moment that you have the thought, ooh, maybe I shouldn't tell X person Y thing, that's the really important thing that you should tell them both.
And this reminds me, I came across a TikTok the other day, and it completely reminded me of you, Roan, because it was a woman, and she was talking about how she and her partner, I think they've been together like 7 years, and she's like, we have basically job evaluations.
I saw that one.
You saw it? Like every 6 months, they sit down and go through the same like little list of questions.
Yeah.
And it's such, it would take the pressure off saying, hey, we have to sit down and have a discussion about our relationship. Yeah, it's a performance evaluation.
I love it.
I would fail those.
Yeah. So if it just becomes ingrained part of it, then it's not about, oh God, first I have to stress out about bringing this up, and then I got to figure out how to approach them. And then I got to find the perfect time so they're not in a mood, so they won't feel attacked. And then I got to, if it's just part of your thing, then yeah. And I love that you saw that, because I immediately thought of you, because I went, oh, talk your face off.
I'm so serious. I did see it on TikTok, and I actually almost sent it to my girlfriend, except that she's never on TikTok, so she would find it like months later. But no, I love that idea, because it's this I feel like there's a myth about like talking in relationships that it is supposed to be romantic in and of itself. And I'm like, no, I mean, any functioning partnership, whether it's a romantic relationship, a sibling relationship, a business, a co-writer, whatever, like
a roommate,
any of that stuff, it is essential to do these kinds of check-ins, because why would we think, like, it's not as if when your washing machine starts acting up, you're like, well, I guess I'll just hope that maybe someone who repairs washing machines is at the next dinner party that I attend, so that there's a perfect moment for me to be like, gosh, could I just pick your brain about something really quick? Like that's nonsensical. So
clients repair people everywhere right now are going, don't do that shit. Just don't do that shit. I am off.
Exactly. Well, and exactly. It's like, no, you want to make an appointment, explain exactly what's going on, do it at a time when both of you are consensually engaged in solving this problem together. And I think that it's so silly that we don't translate that into a romantic relationship as well, especially because like making something business-like, it sounds unromantic, but it also takes so much emotional pressure off of like turning a conversation that is already maybe difficult to have. Not just because it's bad, but because it's like feelingsy and pressureful or whatever.
Feelingsy.
No,
gross.
I know, squirmy feelingsy. But yeah, it is a relief and a gift to give someone a non-pressure filled, non-emotional way to tell you things that are important to them. And like, I feel like that is the gift that we should all be giving our partners and ourselves. So yeah. Like monthly review, 6-month checklist, whatever, performance review, I'm all about it.
Yelp.
Yelp.
Oh my God. When not service was horrible. Could you imagine? Oh my God, I'm dying.
Oh my God, all right. I'm gonna like make up a like a romantic partners checklist questionnaire sheet.
You
like,
should.
To everyone I know.
Google Doc, make it a Google Doc so we can all just like shoot that over to our partner. You can fill it out ahead of time, and you sit down and go over the results.
Totally, you schedule.
You just hold up those cards, like you ask the question, and you hold up the card with the answer.
Oh, like
the dating game or whatever.
You pull up the like pie charts, like sometimes, never. Oh, and this one has
It'll be a whole thing. You like send a Bumble invite for when you're both able to put it on your calendars, and you schedule a Google Meet. Then you have an infographic that you feed it all into.
I'm loving this.
Mark yourself busy on your calendar.
Yeah, it's time.
In case there is a single moment of doubt that I'm an enormous nerd, can I just tell you all something that has nothing to do with anything? Which is that I went to my first party since getting like everyone being vaccinated.
Ooh.
And it was, and don't get too excited because it was a Moth party. And what we did is I have these friends who have a house in like the Pine Barrens.
Wait, what is a Moth party?
I'm telling you.
Okay. All right. She's explaining. I'm like, I am not cool enough to know what a Moth party is. Help.
No.
Okay.
You might be too cool. So my friends have this like house in the country. It's like a kind of was a trailer thing and a bunch of land, and they've been fixing it up. It's really nice. And because they're out in the Pine Barrens, there's like no light pollution and bunches of nature. And so they set up this thing where it's like a big white sheet kind of held up, clipped up like a projection screen, and then a big super bright light to draw the moths. And then the moths are drawn to the light and then land on the bed sheet, like on the white sheet, so that you can see them perfectly. So it was like a fucking nature documentary where all these different kinds of moths came to and there were like drinks and snacks, and we were all sitting around chatting, but like instead of a movie screen,
so hard I snorted.
It was a sheet with moths on it, and they were amazing.
That is hardcore.
I put a picture on our Instagram or something. I have these like close-up videos. You could pick them up. They would just let you. They were so chill and like hanging out, and they're so cute with their little fuzzy bodies. Anyway.
But see, I have that on
I
my front
love
porch.
you.
I have that on my front porch, Rowan. Like I could seriously sit outside and my whole side of my house, because we have a light and then the rest of the neighborhood's pretty dark, and we have a giant, huge tree over our yard. So yeah.
I'm so jealous. It was so beautiful, and I wanted to
cool.
sit there all night.
I would be down for that, as long as there's mosquito repellent, because I would get eaten too at the same time.
Yeah, there was mosquito repellent, there were snacks, it was great.
If it took place in a museum rather than in actual nature, I would be there with you.
There you go.
But in actual nature, I'm a big no.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm a big no. Okay, and now that we're all laughing and in a good mood, let's puncture that balloon with this with this letter from Reddit. Speaking of Reddit,
are we all feeling okay to dive into this rather touchy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
So I want to give a very extreme trigger warning and content warning. We're about to do a what would you do segment, and this is a question from Reddit. And so this is a content warning for sexual abuse, for dehumanization, and for hypersexualized language in a negative context. Does that seem like it covers?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Things?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I would say emotional abuse as well.
emotional abuse,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So I'm gonna read the letter, and I'll look at the thing so that we can tell you in the show notes, like when it's over. But the safest thing to do if you want to skip this little piece is skip ahead to the part where we're done talking as a foursome and lovely Ro leaves us, and then we're back with recommendations, just the three of us, and then you will have skipped the entire segment.
Basically, when you hear the wonderful music.
There you go, when you hear the music. All right, so this is called My Boyfriend is Using Me as a Sex Doll. And I'll say, if I can echo something Zia said off camera, the reason that we're doing this, even though it's a highly, I think, it's a potentially triggering letter, is that it is a really important one, an important conversation that we wanted to have.
Mm-hmm.
So my boyfriend is using me as a sex doll. My 20F boyfriend, 25M, have been together 2 years. I told him I wanted to wait until marriage to lose my virginity. Well, when quarantine happened, he repeatedly asked and begged until one night I took my clothes off to have sex with him. Since we were home all day, he wanted sex several times per day, and I didn't have much choice. Now, when I come home late at night from work, I just want to eat dinner and go to bed, but he always demands sex before I can sleep. It's not even enjoyable for me. It's actually somewhat painful. Yesterday, I told him I wasn't going to have sex whenever he wanted, and he started saying things like, quote, the only reason I exist is to please men, and how, quote, I'm only good as a cum dump, among other things. I'm trying to stand up for myself, but nothing I do changes his mind, and if I leave, he might harass me for doing so.
Can I preface this by saying, if you are in this situation, leave. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And there's like legal issues here. Just leave. This is not someone who loves you.
No. And I think sometimes, especially, she's 20. Oh my God, she's so young. At 20, you think you're grown up and can handle anything. And then you get to be an old lady like me, and you're like, oh my God, you're a baby. You haven't experienced half of what the world's going to throw at you yet. But I would say that I think sometimes women people who are socialized as women are also socialized that this type of situation is okay. You know, not everyone, but there are some growing up situations where this would be considered just natural, right? And I think there's also a huge level of inner deniability that we do as women sometimes to say, hey, this person actually loves me, so I'm going to look past all this horrible, awful stuff that they do to me. No, you know, it may just be being a jerk. It may be this far. It may be, you know what? I ask every day that he close the shower curtain and he never does, right? All of those are varying levels on the spectrum of not respecting you, but they are all not respecting you. They're all not okay. This is plain and simple sexual assault without any kind of doubt. Just because somebody is your boyfriend, just because somebody is your husband, just because somebody you're in a long-term relationship with does not mean that this is okay. If you start having sex with somebody and you only do it because you feel pressured, that is also not okay. And it is not okay on you. It is not okay on them, if that makes sense. And I would also like to say, I agree with Zia wholeheartedly that you need to leave. Wholeheartedly. I would also say, though, that I understand that can seem daunting. It can seem super scary. It can be one of the hardest things you will ever do is to leave an abusive relationship. So again, baby step this. Put a backpack together with some of your essential stuff, toss it in your car or maybe down by the mailboxes of your apartment complex or whatever it may be, right? So you can grab that and leave if you can get to that point. You know, leave it at a friend's house, leave it at a coworker's house, leave it at work. You know, have that sort of backup thing and start baby stepping your way into being able to go. It is really hard. Completely understand that, but this is only going to get worse.
Yeah, this is an escalating situation.
This is only going to get worse.
Even from these 2 paragraphs, you can tell that this is on the path to some really bad stuff. I mean, this is bad enough, but
yeah.
Well, I will just say when I was 20 years old, I was in exactly the same situation. I had been living with my boyfriend for 2 years, thousands of miles away from home. I didn't have anybody because by 2 years in, I had been completely isolated from everybody that I cared about, including my family who were angry with me for making the choice to stay. He never hit me. There were plenty of times that I had sex when I didn't want to have sex because I felt like I had to. And I understand the pain part of it. I understand my partner was not of that same mindset. I believe that he loved me in the way that he understood love to be, but he was also an abused child who was neglected and beaten. And so now that it's many years later, how many years? 28 years later, I have a much different perspective on it. I have a much different perspective because I have a daughter who is almost 20 years old, and I raised her because of the things that I went through to the point where she is the exact opposite and doesn't take shit from anybody. Whereas I took it all because I felt like that's what I deserved. I loved this man. He had some serious mental health issues, and I felt like if we can just get him some help, it's going to be okay. And what finally got me to leave was the night that I came home from class, because we were in college. I came home from class and he was still asleep because he was in that cycle of sleeping all day and staying up all night. And I came in and I told him, you have messages on the phone. People are trying to get in touch with you. You need to take care of your business. And he got up and he said, well, I'm going to take a shower. And I said, what, do you have to look pretty to talk on the phone? Like, I was so frustrated by that point. And he grabbed the knife that I was using to make a sandwich and he pushed me on the couch and held it over my head. And it was enough to scare both of us to the point where I walked out the door and he kind of just collapsed. Like, I can't believe I just did that. We had been together 24/7 for a long time because of school. And over the summer, like, we had a job where we worked together and then we came home together. So I was always with him and I didn't have anybody else in town at that point. And so I did have one girl that I sort of knew from one of my classes, and I walked to her house because I had been there one time before. And I said, I need help. And she actually knew my boyfriend because they had gone to high school together. And long story short, the part that got me the most about this story was that part at the end that I'm afraid he'll harass me if I leave. And he likely will. He likely will. And but you can survive that. I did. He stalked my apartment. The only place I could find to move was across the parking lot from where we lived. So he could see in my windows, he could see when I was coming and going, he could see who was coming over to my house. And people were afraid of him, so they wouldn't come to see me. There was a lot of stuff that went on. It went on for a couple of months, and then he finally moved away and went to go live with our friends. And honestly, he's in a much better place now in his life. I still hear about him because we have friends in common, and I think he finally got help for what he needed to, and I'm happy. I think our situation was definitely different than the one you're in the sense that this was a situational situation in a lot of ways. But I get it. I absolutely get it. I went on to get my master's in counseling and become a school counselor. And I did my internship working with women who were victims of domestic violence. And I heard the stories. I did group therapy. I did individual therapy. I absolutely know how hard it is to leave. And I would say what Zio said and what Avery said, the safety planning is hugely important. Think about anybody that you even if it's somebody that you barely know, but you get a good vibe from them that they would help you. Your family, I'm not going to say every family is accepting, but when I called my mom and said, and I thought, no way would she be supportive. She said, find another place to live, give me a call. I'll send the money to whoever to get you a deposit put down. And I was lucky, and not everybody's that lucky, but you would be surprised at how far your family will be willing to go to make sure that you're safe, even if they're pissed at you, even if they think you've made a bad decision by being with this person. And your friends, old friends, you know, they may tell you, you should have left, you should have left, you should have left. But you have to hear that as, I love you, I love you, I love you, I want something better for you. And again, if you are a friend to somebody who is in this situation, think about the words that are coming out of your mouth when you do talk to them. And if you can make those words, I love you, I'm here for you, no matter what you decide to do, that will make it 100 times easier for them to eventually leave. I worked in the police department training police officers how to respond to situations like this. And statistics showed, 7 times, this was 20 years ago, but 7 times was the average of time someone would leave until they left for good. Wow. So even if you left before and you went back, that it doesn't mean that there's no hope left. And sex should not be painful. It should not be because you feel like you have to do it. And I hope that you are able to take those baby steps. Safety planning, find that one person, even if it's one person that you think you could possibly connect with, and take those steps and know that there's people here. I will give the phone number for the domestic violence victim hotline you can call. I'll put it in the show notes or have them put it in the show notes. And I've worked those hotlines before. The people are very understanding and they will help you. They will get you resources in the area where you live. The pandemic has seen a huge increase in this because everybody is stuck home and there were not a lot of options, but we're coming out of it. So I hope that you don't stay for that reason, because there are alternatives for you, and I'm pulling for you. I can tell you, it's 28 years old later. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I have a wonderful life, and you can have that too. So I hope that you're able to take those baby steps and make yourself safe.
So glad you're here with us today for this.
I know. Couldn't have had a better person.
Yeah.
Well, when I read it, I said, okay, well, there's a reason why you guys asked me to come this week.
Yeah, we didn't even know, but
no.
But you know what? I do think that is a good way to end our episode on at least this portion of the episode on a level of hope.
Can't really add much to that. That was amazing.
No, absolutely. So, and Rose, since now that we know how amazing you are, not that we didn't before, can you tell all the good folks where they can keep finding you and how they can read you and all that good stuff?
Sure. You can find me at RL Merrill Author, RRL, just like from Charlotte's Web. I always think of it that way. The goose, and everything's EER. That's you can find me at rlmerrillauthor.com. You can find me on the socials at the same. I guess probably the thing that I would love for people to pick up is A More Perfect Union, which was an anthology we put together to help voting suppression organizations that are trying to fight against that. And there's queer stories, there's male-female stories, there's all kinds of good stuff in there. And it's all about like why you should vote, and making sure that we have resources for people in this country is a good reason to vote. So again, it all kind of comes back around. But Zio and I have had some projects together in the past, and hopefully we'll again in the future.
Oh, we will. Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, I would love to connect. So find me, let's chat about anything. I am pretty much an open book. So if there's stuff you want to talk about that you've been through, I'm more than happy to connect. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So nice. So 5 seconds ago, I said to Zio and Avery the horrible confession that I could not think of a recipe for this week that related. And Zio, always intelligent, was like, what about a snack that you've really liked lately, or it's ice cream season? So here's what I will say. Do you like ice cream? Do you
Yes.
like cookies?
Yes.
Me too. Okay. You get your vanilla ice cream, whatever, it doesn't even matter, like decent vanilla ice cream. And you make my oatmeal cookies.
Oh yeah.
You bake
Okay.
It's
Keep
so
going.
easy. This is a recipe that's been like passed down from my grandmother. And I always was like, oh, it's so nice. I love having like these recipes from generations ago. And my mom was like, it was probably like passed down, quote unquote, as in like she got it off the back of an oats box and like
the Toll House recipe that
exactly.
passed down.
Exactly. So anyway, I will spill the family secret, which is probably Quaker Oats secret. You bake the cookies. I mean, you can bake them like regular cookies if you want, but no need to even bother making them cookies because you're just going to mush them up. So you can just like spread the dough out, bake them. Once they've cooled enough that they will not melt your ice cream, you take your vanilla ice cream, you take a hunk of your oatmeal cookie, you mush it into the vanilla ice cream, you sprinkle it with cinnamon, and you mix the whole thing together, and you top it with coarse salt. And it is the greatest dessert ever. It's like an oatmeal cookie pie, but kind of like a shoe fly pie because of the cinnamon and the vanilla. It's so good. Avery's making a face because it sounds gross. I know.
No. I'm making a face because basic stupid me was like, oh yeah, ice cream cookie. and then you went somewhere completely different with
Oh my
it.
gosh,
And
it's
I
so
am really excited for this.
Yeah, because here's the problem with cookie sandwiches with ice cream for me is number one,
They squish out.
The ice cream squishes out. Well, that was gonna be my number two. My number one and far more important to me is it hurts like hell to bite into ice cream. Who are these maniacs?
Remember chip
out
witches?
there
Do they still
with,
make
like
those?
veneers or
Right.
biting into ice cream? Like that hurts so much.
Do they still make chip witches?
Yeah, I think so.
Which is like
What
a
is
hard.
that?
It's a hard chocolate chip cookie with a hard block of vanilla ice cream. Well, 2 chocolate cookies, and you're supposed to bite into this.
Is it sponsored by the American Dental Association?
Probably.
Seriously, it's like, yeah. Anyway, this
Wow.
is better. You eat it with a spoon. It's a bunch of mushing, which who doesn't like cooking that happens by mushing? And it's so good. And these these oatmeal cookies, the recipe. So here's a fun fact for you, which I only learned because of this recipe, a fun food fact. So these are made with Crisco instead of butter or margarine.
Mm-hmm.
Crisco is an ingredient that for me was a very normal baking ingredient growing up. And I assumed that it was so for everyone. And I only learned later that for a lot of people, they think Crisco is like lard or something like an old fashioned, they would never bake with an ingredient. And I never knew this, but Crisco is actually like a feature in a huge number of like Jewish recipes because it was super, super cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And so like immigrant Jews coming to America couldn't afford butter, couldn't afford whatever was before margarine in those days. I don't know. And so, Crisco was the shortening that you would use, and it is what you use in these cookies. And I've tried making them with butter, and the Crisco is way better.
Yeah.
I love
my grandmother
Crisco.
swore by Crisco, especially during
Crisco's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Crisco also
high holidays.
Chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta be. Anyway, that is my recipe. Zio, thank you for saving me from.
No, cookies and ice cream are awesome. Like we buy this snack called brownie brittle. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like a little pouch, and they have different flavors. We get the chocolate one. It's basically like someone sliced the top of a brownie off, like the crispy top.
Oh, okay.
So it's like squares of like crispy top or brownie top. And whenever you get a bag, there's always pieces in the bottom. Right. So you pull out, if you pull out maybe 4 squares and the rest of it's all broken up. So you get the vanilla ice cream, you take those little crispy pieces of brownie, put in this one, like we sit there and do. It's fun.
Yum.
That sounds delicious though, especially with warm oatmeal raisin cookie.
Yeah, like
oatmeal cookie.
Just a little warm so that they mush in, but not so hot that they'll melt your ice cream. I mean, if you want to live dangerously, and I do, you can also do it with just the oatmeal cookie dough, which I've also done, and it's also delicious.
The CDC just paid me $1 million to say don't do that, but I think you should.
Raw cookie dough for 40 years.
Oh my God, raw cookie dough is phenomenal. I'm sorry.
I'm fine. I remember once someone said to me in New York, like, "Oh, they're opening this cool thing. It's like a restaurant that's just cookie dough that you can eat without baking it." And I was like, "A restaurant? That's called My Kitchen."
Yeah.
And she was all like, "No, but you can't eat raw flour and raw eggs. It'll make you sick." Never made me sick.
If you're eating it all day, every day, sure.
Yeah.
But, like,
live dangerously, Louise. Live dangerous.
Is that cereal restaurant still around?
I don't know. I know you're.
That was that was an interesting concept. Anyway, let's get to the music. We talk food because I'm hungry now.
You can tell we've missed a couple of weeks together.
So this playlist is called Uncomfortably Me, and it's got Cage the Elephant on it. I don't know how, but they found me, which if you haven't heard those guys, they're really interesting. It's got the Police, and it has my rec for this week, which I won't mention. But yeah, so the songs are a little bit all over the place because our letters this week were kind of polar opposite. But I wanted to find a nice balance and put some levity into the situation. So you guys let me know what you think in the comments below.
So recommendations this week, I will kick us off. We have so Schitt's Creek. If you haven't watched it, it's fabulous. Annie Murphy, who was the sister, what was her name? All I'm thinking is David right now. Alexis, yes, a little bit Alexis. She played Alexis in Schitt's Creek. She has a new show out. It's called
Kevin Can
fuck himself.
Yeah.
They have the UCK blocked out, but I'm a grown up, so I can say fuck. And I watched the first episode. I have not watched the additional ones. I will be. But I'm going to recommend it because it is really interesting the way it meshes a real, like, your basic multi-camera comedy show,
Sitcom.
like your sitcom versus sort of what happens behind it. And it's really well done how they mix the two together between the drama and the sitcom, number one. I think it's a really interesting, and it actually kind of plays into some of our letters here today about sort of the expectation of how you are supposed to act, how you are supposed to be according to other people, and what's actually going on behind the scenes of your head. And so it's really an interesting way of having commentary on that. I have not looked at the writers. I need to, but if the first episode was not written by a woman, I go into shock. I mean, it reads really true. It reads really true. I don't think it's an easy watch. I would not say that, but it's a really interesting watch. And I think she does a phenomenal job. I mean, if you go in thinking that she's just going to be silly like Alexis,
right? Yeah.
It is not that. It is not, the sitcom parts are like that, but it also, it's got a ton of depth into it. The characterizations are really, really good. And I just think it's a really unique way of looking at the situation, of basically the situation you find yourself in when you're like, I'm just going to go with the way everybody expects me to be, rather than true to yourself.
I've only seen the trailer or whatever for it, and I love it. Made me want to watch it because I don't know if you've seen it, Roan, but it's like they basically take the Brady Bunch. It's like the Brady Bunch grid or whatever, and it's just, you can, just from the music and the way that they zoom in on her and just the expressions that everyone has with her, you can tell that this is going to take that whole, like, Our Life is Perfect sitcom family situation and toppled it over. And so I was like, I'm in, you got me.
Yeah.
But so I'm glad to hear that it lives up.
Yeah, the first episode is great. I need to watch the rest of them. But yeah, I highly recommend it, because it also, the other thing is, it goes between the two. So it transitions between the drama and the sitcom back and forth, but it does it so well. And it was really interesting. I read an article about it, and what they were talking about was the set dressing, because it's the same set for both things, but the placement of the camera is different and the lighting is different, and just sort of that, again, it's through the looking glass,
right,
of how you can twist it just enough to start getting that reflection of reality in it. And it's fabulous.
They did a lot of that with WandaVision.
Yeah.
Where they that was brilliant, because every like era, they captured the ideal of every era from the 50s on. And then you could, as the story went on, you saw it start to like morph into, or you saw the ugliness and stuff. That was really well done. I'm glad that these stories are being told now, that we're seeing stories like this. Cool to check it out.
Yep.
I guess I'll do my rec since I'm talking a lot.
There you
go. So my rec this week, we're going back to music, and it is the new album from Garbage. If you're a little older, you might remember Garbage. They were really big in the mid-90s, something like that. But they didn't break up on anything. I guess they've just been sort of quiet for a while. So this is their first new album in, like, I should have looked this up, I don't know, but it's their first new album in a long time. And their lead singer, Shirley Manson, said that this is the record that they've always wanted to make. And whenever a legacy artist like this says that, I get nervous, because I'm like, okay, so they're trying to like break the sound that they are known for, and do something like edgy or whatever. But this is definitely their best album. I think it's in the running for one of the best albums of 2021. It's called No Gods, No Masters. It's got 19 songs on it, so it's almost an hour and a half long.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And if going by what Shirley said about this being the album that they've always wanted to make, the first song is called The Men Who Rule the World. The second one is The Creeps, Uncomfortably Me, which is what the playlist is this week. Godhead, A Woman Destroyed, No Gods, No Masters, This City Will Kill You, which is a fabulous song. It's 2 discs. They do a cover of David Bowie's Starman. They do a song with Brody Daly. They do one with Brian Albert. They do one with Exene Cervenka from X and John Doe. I mean, this is like, if I wanted Garbage to do an album in 2021, this is the album. So if you
Shirley Manson and Exene Cervenka,
yes,
I am like creaming.
The Girls Talk with Brody Daly is like by Anthem. I mean, I played it on repeat the other day. I was like emptying the dishwasher because I was like, oh my gosh, this is such an amazing record. And the last song is called Time Will Destroy Everything, which you can tell a lot of this was written during the pandemic because there's a lot of like topical stuff here. The song that she does with Exene is called Destroying Angels, and it is epic. And there's you can hear their influences in there, which is kind of cool because they've been around for a while. So you hear some Joy Division on the first couple of tracks, and you hear some other stuff. And it's brilliant. And her voice is so strong and they sound amazing. So No Gods, No Masters from Garbage. It came out like a week or 2 ago. So yeah, check it out.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Thank you. My recommendation is a sort of like, I've been reinvigorated in it. So my recommendation is Killing Eve. I watched it when I watched the first season when it first came out. And then for some reason, I like fell off in between seasons 1 and 2. This is why I like to only watch things when all the seasons are out, because I have a terrible attention span for like getting back to things in the middle. But so recently Timmy and I have started rewatching them so that I could catch up. And so we started back from the very beginning, even though we'd both already seen it. And there was something about watching it through, like starting and watching it in big clumps. I appreciated it even more this time than I did the first time. I think that having already seen it, having already known what the genre was, what I was getting into, I was so much more primed to appreciate it. And I just think, so, okay, I'm not a fan of Fleabag. Like, I know it's fine, but I just like didn't like it very much. But I think that she is an amazing writer, and her writing on season 1, especially the dialogue, the way she incorporates like absurd detail to make even like workaday scenes feel alive and captivating. I was so impressed. I was so just like so in it. And now I'm like really right back in it. And I love Eve and Villanelle so much. The secondary characters are amazing. So if there's anyone out there who has not already seen Killing Eve, you need to run, don't walk to your nearest Blockbuster Video and remedy the situation.
Did you? Oh my goodness.
You scared yourself.
I love that.
That was an alarm I forgot I set. I'm so sorry.
Well, did you see that Sandra Oh's going to be in a new show?
No.
I did see something about that.
Yes, I got really excited. It's called The Chair, and she's like an academic chair.
Oh, ooh, okay.
Yeah, because I watched the trailer. I don't remember which like streaming service it's on. I want to say it's Netflix, but I could be lying.
I'll find it. Don't worry.
Lying.
But
I love Sandra Oh.
I do too,
God.
and I was really happy.
Phenomenal.
Like, I watched Killing Eve because she was finally in a lead role. You know, I was like, finally give her a real show. But I didn't know who Eve was, and when she came on screen, I don't know if you've seen her in anything else. When she came on screen, I was like, holy crap, because she was in one of my favorite shows from like, I don't know, 10 years ago or more, My Mad Fat Diary, which was a British sort of like a coming of age based on a true story, based on this woman's memoir. But she played one of the kids in that, and she was like a teenager then. Totally different character. Yeah, Jodie. Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh. So when she walked on screen, I was like, wow, how is this going? Like, what is? You know, I didn't know what to expect from her. So it was amazing. So like, I totally fell in love with her portrayal of Eve. I mean, her portrayal of Villanelle, and I was like, wow. And then the way they play off of each other, like the chemistry that they have, and it's an amazing show.
It's
so yeah,
so good. The soundtrack is amazing.
Yeah,
The
clothes.
Oh my
I'm
God,
not even a
yes.
fashion horse, and I was just like, I want everything. The one scene where she's in Amsterdam sitting at the table by herself in that
Yes.
whatever.
Oh, yes.
And they're like, "Can I take a picture? You look great. Can I take a picture?" And she's like, "No."
No.
For the life.
I love
It's
that.
so good. And I feel like one of my favorite things is when I'm watching a show and I can really see that everyone is doing their job really well.
Yeah.
So I feel
It's
like
not a lazy show.
it's
You
not
know,
like
they were not lazy in it
costumes
at all.
the costumes communicate character.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
it is a way that Villanelle, it's like a love language of Villanelle's. And then Eve is just this kind of, she has these like dumpy, boring, the scene in the kitchen when they meet for the first time. We were watching it and Eve is wearing that like one of those sweaters with a collar attached.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, is that one of those sweaters with the collar attached? And 1 second later, Villanelle was like, I'm sorry, is that a sweater with a collar attached? So I feel like there's this, it's like a very participatory show where you watch and like engage with the characters, and then the characters engage with one another in that same vein. So it feels very like realistic, and
Yeah.
the writing is just phenomenal. Anyway,
Yeah.
highly recommend.
Well, like you
Yes.
said, every detail is like accounted for. The music, the setting, her apartments, like all that stuff is just so
Yeah. Oh my
on
God, her
point. It's-
apartment,
yeah.
the production design with like the fonts and the colors.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just fucking flawless. And
Yeah.
I am so glad to be back in that world.
I'll have to rewatch now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I'm on board now.
Yes, rewatch and please text me every thought and feeling that you have.
We'll do live tweeting of
Talk your face off.
killing you.
I will spoil nothing. I have big feelings.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for coming and joining us for another episode of Dear Romance Writer. Please send in your letters. Tell your friends to send in their letters. Hit your subscribe button, and all of that good stuff. And yeah, I'm trying to think. You know what? It's summer. All of our brains are starting to melt. But we still love you, and we will see you guys at our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for subscribing to Dear Romance Writer. Remember to keep sending in those letters at dearromancewriter.com. We can't wait to tell you what to do. Dear Romance Writer is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love, frolic.media/podcasts.